Good morning and welcome to another week of GM Tips. GM Rick here. As you'll see, a little change up in the background. There is no wizard and dragon anymore. There is now a famous figure of a kitsune from Kami-sama Kiss. If you've ever seen the lovely anime series, if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil it of who he is. All I gotta say is watch. It's definitely funnier than heck and worth watching. Uh, this morning's topic and what I wanted to really spend a little bit of time on is how to design your own adventures. And what I mean is things that you have with your material for your campaign. It could be a one-shot adventure, it could be part of a campaign as an adventure, but how do you go about designing them? It is a tall task. Some people are just, draw a map, scribble some notes, and go people. Most of us want to flesh it out more, especially if we ever want to run it down the line again. If it's something that we want to run it with a different group when our groups change a bit, and we want to maybe one day put it up for publishable material. Those are the kind of things I want to focus on a little bit. It is a daunting task. There's no doubt about it. If you think it's going to be easy to just write your own adventure, you've got another thing coming. For some of us, the creative juices flow really well. For some of us, they don't. But what I see is really the challenges. Number one is organization and time planning. To take the undertaking of writing this up takes time. And in order to plot out the amount of time you need to design an adventure and truly put the work into it that will do it justice, it comes with time planning. You have to flesh it out and kind of whiteboard it at the beginning so you can take a look at what is it going to take and entail. Choosing a plot that's going to be interesting for players. Let's face it, folks, there's a lot of modules and adventure paths that are already pre-published that people have either seen it, done it, or been there before. As the old saying goes, there's nothing new under the sun that hasn't already been done. But that said, you can take the time to really create and take that idea to another level where maybe the last person that wrote it left off before they got to that level of excitement that really makes it new and exciting. We love the classics. Hey, let's face it, Slave Pits of the Undercity from D&D, or Hamlet, the Village of Hamlet, or Temple of Elemental Evil. All of these were great ideas that a lot of us remember and love. Sorry, I got Oliver and Company in the background with my little one. She loves watching it. She can even sing that Street Savoir Funny. 5-year-olds for you. So these are the kind of things that, as you look at it, you want to take into account. Are your map skills there? Let's face it, folks. Some of us can draw like the artist Devin Rue and just pump things out like there's no tomorrow. Other one of us struggle to even draw a map. Let's it takes some skill and some practice. So setting aside the time to get good at the craft of doing that type of thing. Illustrations. Can you do illustrations? Can you draw? For me, it's stick figures. Now, I can do a little better than stick figures, but if you're going to ask me to draw a human being that looks anything like what these publishers put in for Paizo and Wizards and Numenera and some of these other ones, no, I have no skill. My sisters, they could do it all day long. They could draw these things by hand out of their mind and make it look like just amazing work. Me, I will have a stick figure with a few props of hair on it, some eyeballs, and yeah, it's about it. So can you do that type of work, and who can help you with that type of work? Collaboration. Do you collaborate on ideas? I love collaborating, especially I'm doing one right now where I'm kind of thinking something out with a wonderful person on Twitter that I've been going back and forth with on a module idea. And we're having some fun collaborating and just kind of kicking ideas around. And yeah, that sounds good. Nah, let's cut that out. Having that second set of eyes or even third set of eyes goes a long way in the process. Um, and then do you have the time frame plotted out that it's going to take? And do you want to type it or handwrite it? Because let's face it, if you handwrite it, you're going to at some time have to transcribe that over. But Handwriting is easy to erase, to work with. Sometimes when we're clacking away on a computer, it's not as, it doesn't flow as well. And so everybody's a little different with these type of things. So let's address a couple of the key things that I talked about. Time management. How do you figure out how long it's going to take to write up a module? Will it take 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months? I think first thing you have to do is write an outline. So take a piece of paper and put down your core ideas. Number one, what is the core theme that you want the adventure to take? So for instance, if it's a Lovecraftian style adventure, there's a cult to Dagon that has taken over this town in this water area, i.e. Innsmouth. And they're subtly influencing and turning everybody to Dagon. You, the PCs, when I say you, the PCs, have to somehow figure out what's going on, how deep is the influence in this town, and is it salvageable? So there's your plot idea that you kind of flesh out. And then around that, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a gazetteer on the town and what goes on there so people know what the major areas of interest are? So if they don't just want to follow the story all the time, they can go pop out and do something else? Will it have some side adventures that you'll allow people to go on outside the core? Will it have any type of travel outside of the city itself to other locations? Who are the main baddies? Who is the bad baddie of them all? The boss baddie, as we call them. And then who are the henchling baddies that are under them that you're going to run into and maybe build your way up to the boss? What are the rumors that are going around the city that will help the players and give them clues? What type of handouts will be needed? How many maps and locations will you flesh out? Are you going to map out the city itself, or are you just going to leave it to imagination? Um, if so, are you going to put key locations and statistics in the appendix for key people that the players could run into that could be great allies, as well as really bad baddies that can really oppose them? Maybe they're not part of the plot, but they can become part of the plot if the players work around it. So brainstorming the ideas, and then a section to brainstorm the ideas. Here's the kind of things I want to see in there. And then beside it, write out how long you think it's going to take, or a step kind of a time graph of what do you want to accomplish by when. Now be realistic. Most of us are going to say, hey, in 2 days I want to do this. In 3 days, it's not going to happen. Not unless you don't work and you have tons of time on your hands that you can devote just to the adventure. Are you going to have that kind of time? So be realistic in your goals. Set milestones. Most people, huh? Nick Wild, probably outside your door. Go look outside your door. Nick and Judy are outside your door.
No, no, no. I put Nick outside.
Well, where did you put him?
Out to the living room.
Well, you got to remember where you put him, sweetie. Sorry. I'll help you here in a minute when Dad's done with the GM tips, okay? All right. So you got to really lay out realistic time goals for yourself and time management. Most times in adventure, if you look at it, for instance, I look at what goes on for a Paizo adventure, so one of the big ones. From watching what people say, it takes from concept to getting it to be an idea that's even going to be published. They take several months to concept it and really pitch it. And it's something that, you know what, honestly, you pitch it to someone else. And that's what I would do with my ideas. I would sit down and pitch it to a couple of people that maybe aren't playing in your party, that are other people that you really think the world of, that will give good critique. And ask them, would this be something that interests you, this type of concept and ideas? And give them your framework kind of thinking and see what they think. And if they say, yeah, that's great, or no, I'd rather see a little bit of this and that, make sure you include their ideas. It is the great part about collaborators and people who are writing is they have people around them that they can bounce the ideas off of and laugh and have a little fun and blow some steam because you're going to need that. You're going to need that release to really think about those kind of things. So keep that in mind. And then from there, you're going to sit down and put milestones. By this date, I want to have this. By this date, I want to have this. Here's what I recommend. Do your core story first. So, what's the core idea what you want the party to accomplish, and then the steps and different things that are going to take them to get there. So you want to have those subplots that go and lead in and make sure they're cohesive. I mean, they can be a little bit different, but have some sort of a tying factor to them that ties them together. So the players just don't go, why did I do that? Or why was I taken this way? You've got to help them to have a little bit of that. And then from there, you are going to put together your next parts. So here's my side adventures. Here's my gazetteer. Here's my section on monsters and the appendix on their statistics and on NPCs. Here's what I'm going to put together, and here's how much time I'm going to allot for each. And when you choose classes and ideas, make sure, again, they make sense for the story. You just don't want to put a boss baddie that's going to just beat the tar out of your players. You want to think about what kind of diabolical background would they have? Or what kind of corrupt background, or are they a good guy and your players are bad guys, and they're this knight of shining virtue and they have this plan to save the world and you're trying to keep them from doing that. Keep that in mind. What type of religions? Now, mind you, be very careful here. You cannot use core material that is written and published by a publisher. So the gods and goddesses of a campaign, you cannot use that material or area without express permission and most likely sharing the profits with that organization. You have to get their buy-in. Otherwise, you have to keep it generic. So if you're going to write up your own gods and goddesses, you have to take the time to build a pantheon. And it has to be your own and something that is not going to get you in copyright infringement trouble. So keep these things in mind when you're writing this up. I'd love to write things for Pathfinder with all these gods and goddesses. I can't. I am not a Paizo person. I do not have Paizo's express permission to go do this. I do not have Eric Mona's and James Jacobs and Lisa's and all these other people's and Daigle and Amanda Heyman Coons and Crystal. I don't have all of their express rights to go do this stuff. So I can't use this. I have to keep it generic. I can use the core rules or what they call the SRD or PRD material, but I cannot go outside of that. That's the open material I can use. And as a GM, you got to keep that in mind. So keep that in mind there. And then map skills. Do you have a map building program? Do you have a city building program? Can you easily do it yourself? Are you great at artistry and being able to do these type of things and have the time? Can someone else do it for you? And you say, hey, I'll include you, especially if I go to a Kickstarter or publish this in, I will include you in some of the money made by it, or at least give you, and ask them, I'll give you the notoriety and the credibility under the section that will help you to publish and make your own money at some point. Same with artistry. I've got a great friend who is a tremendous artist. He's really good at what he does. I wouldn't even begin to impinge on trying to do that myself. I would go to him and say, hey, my friend Scott, will you help me with this? I really need your help. I'd really love to have you draw up this, this, and this. I'll give you tons of credit here. I'll give you this if it gets published. You got to work out something that's fair and put it in writing, please. Don't say, I'll do this for you and then renege. Put it in writing where both of you sign off and are happy with it. Less legality down the line. I know we don't like legality as gamers. You got to keep that in mind because people get really upset and minds do change and relationships change. And if you don't watch out, you're going to get yourself into trouble. So That is said there. Now, the next part about it is, do they have the time coordination to do the things that you're going to need them to do? Make sure you sit down with them and discuss it with them and discuss milestones with them, and put it into a written thing that you can follow. I know I'm hitting you with a lot of organizational things, but it is the biggest problem that people have writing these. And I know I've been guilty of it too. When you write up the section, you got to decide, do I have a section where I can put the the description that a GM would read, and then the section that is for the GM to run. That's part of the organization with that. So don't skimp. I mean, I know you want to keep it to a certain size. So you have to decide ahead of time what's reasonable. Some people say 18 pages is reasonable for an adventure. Some people say 32. Come up with a number. One of the great things I had from the Paizo and the Wizards people that I've heard both is they've come up with a standard size for their things. So they know what they're trying to fit it into. And so, working with that, you got to know what you want to fit it into. You don't want to make it too large, or otherwise you're going to have other fun. So keep that in mind as you're looking at that. You have to look at what makes sense. So please keep that in mind. And I think as a GM, I really want to keep it to a certain size and quality, because if I go too big and too verbose, it's not going to fit the cost structure I'm going to want. It's not going to help me if I want to ever publish it. Um, I especially want to try to come up with a format that makes sense. So keep that in mind. Um, I think for I will in a little bit, sweetie, when I'm done. But for now, we're going to listen to this, okay? So what we try to do is come up with that size factor that you want to keep it in. And then for cities, what are the important points of interest that will tie in and help the players? You got to sit down and take the time to kind of map that out too, and really look at it and make sense. I love putting stats in. I love putting backgrounds a little bit about the merchants and the different NPCs, because I want it to tie into how they act with the players and react. And if you want somebody else to do that as well, you've got to kind of give them that idea to work with. Um, if it's just for you, that's fine. Then don't worry as much about it. But if you're going to want to publish it someday, you got to look at that. Is what makes sense, and try to come up with what a lot of people do is they put the name, the alignment, if there's alignment in your game, what race, what sex they are, and then what classes, and if there's levels, what levels they are. So a little bit of information. Sometimes you put hit points in there. Sometimes you can put a little bit more. But you really want to keep it concise. If you want to expand on it, you put it in your NPC section later on. It helps keep that wording to a certain amount, and that way you're able to keep to the pages you want to keep it to. Now, sometimes you leave it up to the players, and you don't have to put an NPC back there. Just leave it up to them to flesh out this NPC more on their own. And a lot of people like that, because then they can orient it to their campaign however they want. Temples, if there are temples, different types of theology. Maybe it comes with political. So if there's politics, if it's a sci-fi, different types of ruling classes and people that are in the city, and other points of interest. You want to really flesh it out so your players have a 3D view of that area, and you're not limiting them in a city or a spaceport or a space station or whatever they're going to be based on or in. You don't limit them. It just gives enough of the background to get things going and help the GM to really flesh it out a little bit for them and be prepared for them. So keep that in mind. Now, any magic items and other items of the quest and things you want to give the players, if there's something that's common in the books and you want to refer to the page in which book they come from, or you can do your own and put it in the appendices. Now, again, don't overpower things. Really think about what levels they are and what they're going to need and what would make sense. Um, and keep that in mind. So those are just kind of the things that you really want to look at. And encounter tables, random encounters. You want to have some random encounter tables because people are going to walk around and come upon people. Maybe they're gathering information, maybe they're using other skill sets. Keep that in mind as well. And then also, what are the difficulty ratings and what experience do players get for traps, riddles, figuring things out, gathering information, befriending an NPC? Keep all that in mind because that's something that goes along with the path. And decide where you want them to be at each stage level wise. So at this stage, they should be here. At this stage, they should be here. This stage, they should be here if there's levels involved or advancement. So keep that in mind. I think that's it. It's kind of a core outline, but it helps you in your thinking with things. I know I love to have those ideas and have that kind of framework I can work with. And so I really wanted to provide that with you. I think a lot of people don't explain that, especially to beginning GMs and DMs. And so when you try to create your own, it becomes a daunting task. Don't overwhelm yourself, but try to have a series of steps you go through when you develop your own homebrew stuff. Uh, if you don't feel comfortable with it, then run adventures until you do. And then the ideas will begin flowing and you can begin creating your own. But don't have this start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, or you'll never finish it. You got to really kind of plan it out and think it ahead. Thanks again. I hope this GM tips helps. It's about 21 and a half minutes, but I wanted to give you guys some real good, juicy information that you can use when building your own adventure. Thanks again and have a great weekend of gaming.